Okay, it's now 5:30 PM, and I now call to order the Grand Island Public Schools Board of Education meeting. This is the November 9, 2023 meeting. Notice of this meeting has been advertised in the Grand Island Independent, which is the district's designated method of giving notice of these meetings. We want those in attendance to know that copies of the Open Meetings Act are available at the entrance to the boardroom. If anyone in attendance is interested in addressing our board, you are welcome to do so. We simply request that you complete the appropriate form and turn it into us so that you may be recognized during the request to address the board part of our meeting. If you have not already completed the form, please see the staff person outside the entrance to this room. Public comment is welcome. We do ask that no signs be brought into the boardroom. Mrs. Dibbert, would you please call the roll?
Mr. McFarland.
Present.
Mr. Herlinsky.
Present.
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Present.
Mr. Hawley.
Here.
Mrs. Wilson.
Here.
Mrs. Albers.
Present.
Mr. Sykes.
Here.
Mrs. Jurgens.
Present.
Miss Modlin.
Here.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is items number 3.1 all the way through 3.7. This is the consent agenda as published. Would anyone like to remove any items or add in any items to the consent agenda? Seeing none, does anyone have a potential conflict of interest on agenda item number 3.3? If so, please state the check number you'll be abstaining from voting on. Seeing none, at this time I would accept a recommendation to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, we may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Item number 4, request to address the board. Do we have anyone this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to information items. Item number 5. 5.1, American Civics Bi-Yearly Report. We have Dr. Evan Lee. Dr. Lee.
Oh, where's my HDMI? On the left, got it. Well, good evening, everyone. Hope all is well with you. And I'm here tonight to show no signal. Oh, there we go. And let me throw this over to the other screen. There we go. There. All right, super. I'm here tonight to share with you our social studies, American civics piece that I'm required by public law 79724 to do from the state of Nebraska. It's also in our board policy, and what this is, what this slide is it just shows in that public law, in this part, hold no fewer than 2 public meetings annually, and at least one where public testimony is accepted, and then our board policy just shows that we're aligned to these social studies standards. So just a quick overview, snapshot of PL 79724. It's a law, state of Nebraska law, that talks about how we handle social studies in their schools. And it's within the law, it states the idea is it's not facts and figures, it's not just on this date this happened type of things, but it's more along the lines of we're trying to develop a few concepts like being able to recognize the actual people and understand the stories of social studies in the development of our nation and our state. And these bullet points are within the description of the law. So recognizing services of men and women who played a crucial role in in achieving independence. And in parentheses, those are generally those are the classes that see a lot of this material. Examining the establishment of a constitutional government, preservation of our union, incorporating multicultural education. We see a lot of that within our American history piece, and then instilling pride and respect for the nation's institutions, and we see that in almost all aspects of what we do with social studies. To ensure that we're meeting those requirements, we need a high quality instructional materials and a guaranteed and viable curriculum, which are two key aspects of what we do. Our instructional materials for actually grades 5-12 are TCI and the DBQ project. Now the DBQ project, we added, with the purchase of the TCI materials a couple of years ago, we approved that resource, and that was a big deal. But along with that, we added the DBQ project for the high school. And when we did that, we did it simply because the high school asked for it. They said, could we have this package? A little bit about the DBQ project is its primary source material, and it's the goal behind it is for students to be able to look at this primary source document, and they're looking at pictures of the actual documents and not anything that's a replica. I mean, it's the actual, like if they're studying Constitution, it's the actual picture of the Constitution. And what they're doing with that is they're using that with a series of questions to prompt writing skills. So not just what is this or when did this occur? It's more along the lines of reading into this document and the background behind this document. What can you extrapolate? What can you analyze from this as causes of X and Y and all the different topics? It's a pretty interesting piece. That being said, the high school was the only one that specifically asked for it, so we purchased that. Middle school found out that the high school had it, and they were immediately like, wait a second, this is good stuff. And especially because they got to see it in action a little bit. And so they requested it, and we have since added that piece to the middle school as well. So very important piece to them. As far as what we do with grades K through 3 is it's incorporated within the content of the CKLA curriculum. Grade 4 is the Nebraska Adventure, and that's the year that our students always study the history of Nebraska. So that's where our materials are. As far as things that we use to try to really hone in on the importance of this particular law is we want them to get in depth with several subjects. We hit that at the middle school and the high school, and that's part of the requirement is they need to have it sometime in middle school, sometime in high school, a deep dive into subjects. And traditionally what we've done is with 8th grade, they've studied Abraham Lincoln. That usually happens sometime around February, March, like after President's Day, but through spring break and that. 9th grade is generally a study of civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. The actual law has a list of different things that they could do as choices of what they could actually study into to be in compliance with the law. One of them is to take the citizenship test. We just steer away from that because there's a lot of factors involved. One of them is to attend board meetings, and that option is always available. And then there's a fourth one that was added as being a volunteer at a polling site. So last Tuesday, they could have volunteered and earned some compliance on that. But generally, because we're talking about larger numbers of students, we tend to steer them in this direction for compliance on that. Grades below sixth grade, the law requires that we devote at least an hour per week on these, in areas of these bullet points here. So contributions of ethnic groups within the development and growth of America, discussion of noteworthy events pertaining to history, exceptional acts of individuals and groups, historical background, development of respect for the American flag as a symbol of freedom. Those are within the lesson plans that they do. And then two of the high school courses that we have get into the teaching of civics and American history. And that would be, well, American history and our government class. And they do examinations of all of these bullet points. This is a screenshot picture of our current website, our newly developed website as of last year. And this is where we show the public what our snapshot of social studies is about. So that is sitting live on the website as we are now sitting here. And then as far as social studies, with all the other, with every other subject area as well, we align it to our strategic plan, and particularly these particular points are pertinent to that alignment. So empowering our students through literacy, with social studies there is reading that is involved, and we encourage that reading and writing, access to rigorous, relevant coursework, and the materials that we have right now are top of the game for teaching that, for getting that experience, and then keeping our students on track for the graduate profile. So that's, any questions?
Ms. Albers?
Is having that snapshot on the website part of the law as well? Like that has to be accessible to?
It has to be accessible to the public, yes.
Whatever that is, but in our case, we decided just to put it on the website. Mm-hmm. Is that, okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Jurgens?
Thank you for that presentation, Dr. Lee. I just have a couple of questions, and I'm purely just curious here. Can you detail a little bit more about how we incorporate multicultural education into the fold? And then also, for our newcomer students, what are the requirements, or are there requirements for American civics for those students? I'm sorry.
The first question was multiculturalism, and as you look through the materials, there are a lot of references within the teaching of our history, particularly American history, but also a little bit in the world history as well. That they'll talk about certain frames of time, certain bandwidths of time, and then after they do that general description of what was happening, then they'll move to, here's what's happening in our African American communities. Here's what's happening with our indigenous. Here's what's happening with Hispanic. Here's immigration. And so they look at it from multiple perspectives. So it's pretty thorough. It's pretty thorough. As far as newcomers, we have. I got to remember what grade we're putting that's happening in. We've got the materials at all the. We group them a little differently, and Amanda Levos would be a better person to ask that question as far as who's grouped in there. But we do have the same resource for them, but it might be a different grade level. So, for example, our American history that we have that's geared towards our 8th grade might be what's being used. They're using a little of that and the high school one at the high school level, because they're coming to us, our newcomers are coming to us with all different levels of previous education. So we're trying to find them where they're at and bring them on board. Now, that being said, our resources that we have with a single click can turn that whole text to Spanish. So we at least have that translation available.
Ms. Albers?
Sorry, me again. Thank you for being here. I was just wondering, can they factor in, teachers, educators, can they factor in current events too? Do they have that opportunity to add those sorts of things to the curriculum, just,
Sure.
just what's going on in the news or on a day-to-day basis?
Actually, from my perspective, we kind of encourage that. It's important to know what's happening now, and to be able to relate it to past events, previous events. So, as far as putting that into our curriculum, it's not really written into the curriculum, but it's encouraged that if there's a hot topic right now, and there are hot topics right now, please bring them into the classroom, because our kids in the classroom are, if they're not asking those questions in the classroom, they're certainly thinking about it. And so being able to have, with anything to do with what's happening, current events, the other part of it is there are so many narratives out there. You can find a narrative to fit your square, fit your peg, but to be able to have an open conversation in class about what's happening out there regarding current events, I think is crucial, because then it helps our students develop that they're able to process it rather than relying on what they might find on the internet. They can actually process the real deal. So, long answer, but that's where we're at. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Lee. We sure appreciate your report.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Item number 5.2, time and attendance, leaves management, substitute placement software. Mr. Virgil Harden.
Well, good evening. The only thing you can follow up a civics report with that's more exciting is time and attendance, leaves, and substitute calling. So my timing is impeccable, I'm sure. So we've been working very hard over the last really few months. I have my esteemed colleagues here with me, and so I'm going to fly at the 60,000 foot level and just give you an executive overbrief of what we've been doing. And then we just want to make sure that you have a chance to contemplate and ask questions. So the purpose of this agenda item is to present to you our recommendation to adopt new software to help us modernize our time and attendance, leave, and substitute software. And so we developed a team internally, 2 from IT, 3 from human resources, and 5 from the business office. So we started off with surveying other school districts in the state, seeing what they use. We went through a process of selecting the vendors that we wanted to talk to. We selected 4 vendors. We invited 3 of them in to do a demo. We thought we were going to have 2 come in and talk to us with a demo 2.0, we'll say, but we ended up with 1, which ended up being our recommendation, which is Time Clock Plus. The team, it was a unanimous decision to recommend them, and the price that we'll talk about here later on in the presentation is a bid price, so we are part of many bid purchasing co-op type things, and so the pricing that we're having from them is on one of those, so we've met that. Now this is technically a service, it's a software as a service, so it's not a lowest cost situation to begin with, but you'd rest assured that we followed the laws there. And so with that, I'm just going to turn it over to let my esteemed colleagues share their thoughts about the importance of this project.
Good evening. Just a couple of things to say about the process. Number one, I think Mr. Harden's done a terrific job of making sure that everybody who needs to be involved and be at the table. Part of the second round, when we brought folks in, we actually invited, even more folks from around, people who use the software in different capacities today. And so we got all of that feedback as well during this process. The thing from my perspective, from technically, is currently today we have our business office HR financial system, and then we have a separate sub-calling system, and then we have a separate leave management system from the time and attendance aspect. And so getting the data back and forth between those in a timely manner and accurately has been a challenge. And anytime you have multiple systems, you have multiple accounts, you have data going back and forth, the timing of that data, which one of the systems is in charge of the data, and then the manual processes to get it there introduce potential errors into the system. And so we have productivity issues with multiple systems, we have error issues with multiple systems, and so when we looked at all of the vendors, and Time Clock Plus really rose to the top because they had the one-stop ability to combine both the leave management substitute calling with the time and attendance into one platform that then integrated seamlessly through an API back to our HR financial system. So by being able to do that, when transactions happen in one, they immediately happen in the other. And one of the big things that we kept hearing from our stakeholders was, where do we go to find what our leave balances are? Well, that depended on what day of the month it was and which system you were looking at and which classification of employee you were. And so it just created a bunch of challenges that this, moving forward with this product, will make go away, make it a better experience for the end users, give them the mobile option that they've been demanding to make their lives easier, and so on. So that's my 2 cents.
And I'll follow up with some examples of what Corey was talking about. So while we're entering into those 3 systems that do not communicate very well, HR is currently hand tracking FMLA leave, long-term disability, daily, weekly, and monthly verifying leaves. There are errors. People can pretty much submit any type of leave they want. There are little requirements. They hit enter, and then HR goes through them all to make sure that it's in the appropriate place and everything has been done correctly. The employee is not seeing their real time as a part of that as well, so they may be out of one of those types of leave, but they're able to enter it anyway because it's available. The end user experience is much more pleasant. Subs would receive text messages. That would be an option. And then just a big piece for me, the 13% classified wage increase, we put that in place so that we could recruit and we could retain those highly qualified staff. Right now, we could hand collect every single piece to try and prove that that's happening. We have no evidence right now. We have no reporting capabilities to be able to do that.
Alrighty, and so there is an attachment that I do want to draw your attention to, the return on investment attachment, so I don't know if you can bring that up. And so super easy to read, I'm sure, for you. I have a cheat sheet called the Excel spreadsheet. So lots of information on here and just really only a few pieces of information. I always like to give you all the information that I have, the analysis, and there ends up being, there's a few pieces of information on it that's really tells the story. So the blue colored information is actual, so I use that information to verify that currently our time and attendance software that we use, which is called Kronos Workforce, is increasing cost 10% a year. The Smart Find Express, which uses for leaves and substitutes, is increasing 6% a year. So in negotiating with Time Clock Plus, we offered the fact that by statute, school districts can enter into contracts up to 7 years, and so we offered that 7-year time frame, and they agreed to no more than 3% increase on their from the start of that to through the 7-year cycle. So you can see then that there's a cost advantage, even though we'll have higher dollars out the door for the software to gain all the productivity things that we talked about. That is one piece of the cost reduction over the life cycle of the software. We intend to use the software past 7 years, We just can't legally go past that. And so you'll see that there's some initial startup costs there. Again, those are actual numbers that we have from Time Clock Plus. And so we just amortize those, I guess, technically over the 7 years to kind of spread the cost out, because it's a one-time cost, but it goes really for the entire time we use the software. And so the thing I wanted to show you, and I do want to switch then to a live thing because I want to change like one number on here to show you how sensitive this analysis is to the assumptions built into it. So I'm going to switch to my spreadsheet, which is the same thing as the attachment, but not our whole payroll is not under an error-prone process or error issue, because obviously we have certified staff member, they're paid on contract. Errors can happen, but that's a different issue than what we're talking about. So classified staff, when we do play certified staff because they've worked on something that's an extra special type after school or before school, that type of thing. So we, as you know, you've heard me mention we have a $9 million payroll, and that's just the general fund. So that's not including the lunch fund, but they would be involved in this process. And so if I just assume that there's a 10% of that payroll that's really kind of at risk for error, and then assume a 1% error rate, which is the lowest rate that the American Payroll Association basically says manual processes and payroll have pretty much the minimum is 1%, and the maximum usually is no more than 8% error rate. So if we assume the minimum, we have a 6.21%. If I just change this to 2%, it goes to 1.09 years payback. So a 1% difference in our error rate changes that payback from just under 7, which is pretty much the standard. If you can capture your money back in 7 years, that's a decent, in my opinion, a good investment. If our error rate's 2%, we're going to get it back in a little over a year, kind of thing. So it's hard for me to tell you if it's 1% or if it's 2%. It's definitely something. So the point in this analysis is that over time, because of the spread in what our current software cost us and the increase in what the new software cost, even though there's an initial upfront cost and there's an initial higher cost to start with, over time, we, in essence, get our money back. Over and above all the benefits that Corey and Carrie and hopefully I have mentioned. The internal capacities that we would gain with this hopefully will position us in the future. And I'm going to say this out loud, but make sure everybody hears me that this is not a promise, this is a hope. And that is that one of the things we just are not competitive by today's standards. Most employees do not want to wait 30 days to get a paycheck. And so currently we cannot pay our staff any earlier than 12 times a year. But with this new software, we might be able to position ourselves with the classified staff, maybe the whole staff, and going to something like a biweekly 26 times a year payroll cycle. That would position us to be more competitive in the job arena when we're looking to hire people. They don't have to wait 30 days to get their paycheck. And so, again, that is a desire, a hope, an outcome that we're reaching for. Cannot do it with what we have in now. But we might be able to do it with this new software. So that's an ancillary additional benefit moving forward. So that's kind of the, we'll say 60 down to the 30,000 foot level. What questions do you have for us as far as what we're asking of you or asking you to entertain?
Ms. Albers?
Are you getting requests now to be paid twice a month, or people would prefer that? Yeah.
Especially, I talked about it with my team, and one of the team members has been here 19 years and remembers the shock that she had when she was told you get paid every 12 times a year, and how hard it was on her at that time, a young person with a young family raising kids, and she remembers it. So it's a real thing for folks, the shock of that kind of financial swing for people, and I think it's a legitimate thing for us to be more competitive. And when we go to hire somebody away from XYZ company that pays on 26 months, that's a roadblock for them to come along. Unfortunately, our retirement system's a roadblock too, but we can't change that, and we really wouldn't want to. We're aware of our roadblocks, I guess, and we think this is one of them, and we think this will help us get in a position to remove one of them.
Mr. Hawley.
If it's approved by the board tonight, when would implementation take place?
Great question. I was hoping for as early as our cycle for hourly staff is the 5th of the month to the 4th of the next month, and then we pay on the 15th. So it makes sense, of course, to start it with the start of a pay cycle. So I was hoping for February 5th, but that's just not possible. It's going to be March 5th, or a fallback date is April 5th. We really want to get it in as fast as we can, just because it gets really busy, and there's a ton of work to do to two big, huge lifts. Implementation, configuring of the software, so it does all the things that we need to do that it isn't doing for us now. And then, of course, employee and user training on the smartphone, kiosk, or time clock. So great question, I appreciate it.
Ms. Jurgens.
Speaking of training, obviously there would probably be a little bit of a learning curve for everyone to take that on. Do you have any idea how much time clock the company estimates that might take?
I do. In the license agreement, you will see that there are a number of contracted hours. I believe it's 240 some hours that they've contracted with us for their help in working with us. So that might be multiple employees on their side working. So it's a big endeavor. It's not the largest lift with software implementation that I've tried in my career. So, but it's probably be the second biggest one, kind of thing. So, you know, the nice thing is we do have the current systems configured, but this is nth degree harder because it does let you configure everything. And so we, you know, it's typical best practice. We did start off, one of the things I didn't include in my summary was we started off setting 28 goals for ourselves about what we wanted to get accomplished. And one of those was make sure that we set up a new system that works for us going forward, and not necessarily just replicating what we currently do and just making that in the system, because some of the things we do now just aren't needed. They need to go away. They're old processes and they need to fall away, and we need to reconfigure to make it work the correct way, more efficiently.
Mr. Linsky.
Moving over to a new system, I'm guessing there's going to be some training that's done that's probably going to be done district-wide. Is that correct?
Yeah, it really will be, because it will impact. So yeah, one of the goals is 100% paperless. And
Right.
so right now, like if a teacher goes to professional development endeavor outside the regular contract, maybe they're working in the summer and they come for a day of professional development, they sign a little piece of paper and that, well, now they'll need to use their smartphone, and that will be pre-configured, and who's supposed to be there and when, and all the things that go along with the technology. And it even has geocaching, so we can control where they can punch in and where they can't. And so, yeah, everybody, 1,700 people probably need to be schooled up on this.
Right. Are you planning on doing it per building, or are you planning on doing it sometime during a time where they've already set aside a meeting time? I'm just worried about adding another meeting to staff schedules.
Yeah, we'll do it during, you know, one of the things is we haven't set that cycle up because, you know, that's going to definitely be involved with the vendor. But it's going to be many, many, many meetings down to the, you know, it's not my first rodeo. I've done this before as far as implementing a new time and attendance thing. And so one of the things you do is you do all of those things. You have big groups of people that are, hey, come and let me help you configure your phone. If you want to use your phone, hey, by the way, here's a kiosk. So if you want to use the kiosk ever because the phone's in the car and or in the house and you drove to work without the phone, here's the kiosk, and there's two time cards or clocks, and you just swipe your card and you punch in and punch out. And it all functions exactly the same. And the other big benefit, I think, is that they do have the ability to have us configure by employee their home language. So if they're Spanish, they'll see it in Spanish. If they're English, English. We asked them about other languages like Arabic, Somali, and they're working on it. So, you know, that's an important thing too. So yeah, it's going to take everything from big meetings to people that are comfortable with technology, early adopters, right, all the way down to the resistors, which are going to be one-on-one. And that's just terms that we use when you talk about change, process change. And so it's not meant to be derogatory. It's just, for whatever reason, that particular change is hard for them. And so they're kind of labeled resistor. And so we have people on staff that will implement that in the business office and HR, and we'll take all comers as many times as we need to, because obviously we want them to be able to get paid. And so most time when it has the pay side of things, they're going to be very motivated. And then the leave part is also pretty important because they want to make sure that they get paid when they're gone. And if they're needing a substitute, they're going to be pretty motivated to make sure that's done so they get a sub in their classroom. So.
Right. Thank you.
One quick comment on the user interface. Anytime we look at new software, especially software as a service, we make sure that it integrates with the current systems that we have. So this one obviously much better. Right now you have to have 2 additional separate usernames and passwords to get into those systems, which most people make the same, which is horribly insecure, and I don't like that. So this actually makes it better because you're already logging into your Google. It can use Google authentication. Everyone knows their staff ID. You have physical proximity. You can use a staff ID to get in. The actual interface with this is actually simpler than what people are using today. So in addition to the on-site, group type meetings, we'll also have some video tutorials and things that'll go out so people can do that on their own and do the self-paced CBT.
And Corey didn't authorize me to say this, but I'm sure he'll give his cell phone number out in 24/7, or somebody in IT.
Virgil?
Yeah, right. Now, we stand ready to really work with end users to make sure, and obviously, the people that use it daily, the classified staff, the punch-in, are primary and foremost on the time and attendance, and then really everybody on the leave side of things. So lots of different methodologies that we'll use to try to make sure the end users has a smooth experience as they can and gets exposed to the 3 different methods that they can, they can log on, they can use their phone, they can use a kiosk, or they can use one of 2 time card clocks that will be in the district, one at the senior high and one in this building.
Ms. Malden?
So you kind of answered one of my questions about the tutorials, because I think that's great. We actually use something where I work pretty similar, and I think it saves a lot of time being able to clock in on your phone, clock out, submit certain things. I think it's great. So I think getting more in depth with the way technology is moving, it's great, saves a lot of time. I mean, yeah, there could be errors, but it's very minimal.
Right.
But I know, we get sent out things every time there's something new, so then it shows you, hey, this is new, that you can do it this way. But I do like the idea of where you have to be able to clock in, because I'm the same way. I can't clock in if I'm too far away or right. So I just think that's great, and I'm pretty excited for this.
Good to hear. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Sykes?
Did you say there's only going to be, there's 1 kiosk at senior high and 1 here?
No, time clock. Kiosks we'll put wherever we need them.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Great
Super.
question.
It's usually multiples per building.
Yeah, I was hoping for the resistors would want to know multiple places for those.
I knew you'd like that term, Mr. Sykes.
Ms. Malden?
So piggybacking off that about the kiosk and stuff, are they able to use their computers as well to clock
Yes,
in?
there are 4 different methods.
So they'll have plenty of different methods for anybody that it's easier for them. They have a method.
Yeah, really, I mean, the number of staff members that are going to enjoy and use the smartphone is probably the biggest. I mean, I don't have statistics from anybody to tell me that. It's a heuristic out of my opinion of the current situation in the world. 90% of our staff have and will use a smartphone, because if you use social media, if you use an ATM, if you log on to any website ever, you can punch in with this system. It's that simple.
Yep, I just know how some people are weird about their smartphones, so I know some people, they will only clock in on their computers.
Yep, they're almost resistors.
All right. No other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next up on the agenda is policy. Item number 5.3.1, authorized use of district vehicles. Mr. Matt Fisher.
What Virgil failed to mention is he's an almost resistor himself. And if that wasn't enough excitement that we've had already with civics, time and attendance, now we're gonna do policy. So this is all exciting stuff. Authorized use of district vehicles. This is the last of the 5,400 policies that deal with transportation. And basically, if you look at this one, this is just simply the guidelines that we have in place when someone is going to use one of our district vehicles. And for the most part, we left this policy as is. As we discussed this, we did realize that pre and post inspection is really not necessarily what we're doing. We do have a checklist. And again, in the idea of making sure that we're not putting something in policy that may or may not be happening, we felt like eliminating those specific things that were a part of that checklist. Obviously, the checklist is a procedural item that, you know, we want to have in place to be able to check on those things that we feel like it's important for us to check on, but to have that in policy and specific to the things that we're going to do with that checklist, I think it's just better covered as a procedure rather than a policy. So, proposing that we would eliminate those items that it shows there. So any questions on that one?
Ms. Albers?
I noticed that this policy doesn't say anything about not having a lead foot, and I thought that maybe that would be included in that.
Well, we did discuss that, and there is a note on the checklist that does indicate that our vehicles are GPS tracked to prevent lead footitis. So yeah, it's not in policy, but it is a procedure that we do follow.
Mr. Pitch is watching.
I know.
All the time.
Always. And if you do go fast, he'll call you Speedy Gonzales. So yes. You guys all know the cartoon?
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay. Well, I don't know. Some of these people, not you, Josh. I was mostly concerned about Eric and Katie and Eddie. Do you know who Speedy Gonzales is? Yeah. Evidently, it's a universal knowledge, regardless of age. All right. Well, I don't know. Okay. Any other questions? We've covered Leadfoot now. Food service management. So let's take a look at this one. As I recall, I don't believe there was anything that we were proposing to change here, so this would simply be a review. The 2 points that are there simply states that reimbursable meals shall be made available for all students, and then item 2 there, free and reduced price lunches will be provided for students whose parents or guardians are eligible for them. So, no proposed changes there. Questions on that one? Okay, it's getting more exciting all along. Copyright compliance doesn't get any more exciting than that. So looking at the copyright compliance, the good thing about it is I don't believe there's a thing that we were going to propose changing with copyright compliance as far as that one is concerned. Now, when you get to the there's this one hidden place in there. Yep, it's in there. This is another one of those timeless pieces. So, music audio tapes. We felt like maybe just music being copyrighted was more important than the audio tape, which we no longer have anything that we do with audio tapes. So we felt like maybe that was a piece that should come out of there. So we're proposing the elimination of audio tape. to be more reflective of the day and age in which we live. All right. All right. Now, this is an addendum that goes along with that copyright compliance, this next item, and I don't think that there was anything in this one that was in need of being changed. There was not any audio tape references here. This was actually one that was added to deal with some of the more modern pieces that were not a part of that original copyright compliance. So, any questions on copyright? Okay, then we go on to mail and delivery systems. And this one is about as exciting as copyrights. Basically says that we will have a system where we will deliver mail. That's pretty much what it says. And then it says that you would not put political items in mailboxes unless they come through the U.S. mail. In which case, if we receive U.S. mail, we're obligated to put it in the mailbox, even if it's political stuff. So, anyhow, that's what that says. Questions about mail delivery? All right. If mail is not exciting enough for you, then let's talk about insurance. So, insurance management basically just says that we will have insurance. And again, it lists the different areas that we would have insurance for, as far as general liability, automobile liability, fidelity, and crime, workman's comp, errors and omissions, and then it talks about property insurance. So, questions on that? Okay. Then, I guess that's it. I'm done. I have to, usually it just rolls right on into more policy as far as the action items, but no, we have to act on the time and attendance first. So. Anything else on any of those first read items for policy? All right.
Thank you. Okay, action items. Item 6.1, time and attendance, leaves management, substitute placement software. Mr. Harden.
I would be happy to answer any questions you've thought of since the presentation.
Mr. Hawley.
Not a question, just a comment. I find this so encouraging. I think that if we're not creating solutions, we're creating barriers. And it's interesting. I mean, you sit here and you said, we know where our walls are at already. And not even so much for, I don't even know how to phrase it. It's not even about retention, just about taking care of the teachers that we have now. I mean, this is a normal standard getting paid every 2 weeks across the country. So I'm really, really encouraged by this. And I'm grateful for the work that all of you did on this committee. So thank you.
Appreciate those kind words.
Mr. Sykes.
And if I understood it correctly, you're hopeful that we can get to that. It's not you said this is not a guarantee. You're hopeful.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to take some time. So I talked with the team, and the earliest I can see us doing it for I can't imagine us doing it for all groups at the same time, but phasing it in for classified staff, the earliest would be calendar year 2025.
Cool. I wanted to save people going, hey, why isn't that happening? They said it would happen fall of 2023, and
We are not saying it's going to happen. We are saying it's a hopeful outcome of this move.
Cool. Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions at this time, I would entertain a motion for Grand Island Public School Systems to enter into an agreement to pursue the new software.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the license agreement with Time Clock Plus as presented and authorize administration to fully execute all necessary paperwork.
Second by Mr. Hawley. Discussion? Seeing none, we may proceed to a vote. Motion
Thank you very
passes.
much.
Item number 6.2, news media services at board meetings. Final read. Mr. Fisher.
Okay, more exciting policy. So these are policies that are on second read, so most of them are going to be identical to what you saw a month ago, although there were some that, as the committee reviewed them again, there were a few other changes that they are, I think, recommending. This first one does not change at all. News media services at the board. Really not looking to change anything, but the last note there about a table for the media being provided felt like, again, that's a procedural piece that we really don't necessarily need to have in policy. I think we certainly want to welcome our media and encourage them to be here, and we're going to make them as comfortable as possible. But again, to spell out that we're going to have a table every time and that every media person would have that necessarily, I don't think is what we want to do in policy. It's more of a practice. So, other than that, stays the same.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve 2481 media services at board meetings as presented.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 2481 media services at board meetings as presented.
Second by Ms. Malden. Discussion. Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, the next policy that we're looking at on second read here is 5205, facilities for milk expression. Again, this was a policy that we deleted a few excerpts from. Basically, deleted it being specific to employees because we felt like that what we really wanted to do with those facilities was to make them available for employees, yes, but also for anyone that would be visiting our facilities that would have need of those. So we changed, basically eliminated the specific references to employees.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 5205 facilities for milk expression as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussions? None. Proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, the next policy is 5210, and this was a policy where there were no recommended changes, so this would simply be a review. So it would be a matter of accepting on as reviewed.
Questions? None at this time. I'd accept a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 5210 safety programs as presented.
Second by Mr. Hawley. Discussion? Seeing none, proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, the next policy that we have on second read here is 5220, first aid. And the recommendation here is to delete this policy. Again, I think to create an expectation in policy that certain first aid procedures were going to be followed when that is not something that we're required to have. I think creates an expectation that if you happen to not follow those procedures, could potentially be a liability for the district, and I think we should not create liabilities for ourselves.
Excellent. Questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve deletion of 5220 first aid as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, the next policy we're looking at is 5312, student conduct on school buses. And here, there were a couple of changes. As you read that first sentence, the Grand Island Public Schools expect students to conduct themselves on the bus in a manner consistent with the established standards of classroom behavior and, this was the addition, and in accordance with all guidelines established in handbooks and policy. Again, just being clear, not classroom behavior expectations would vary. I think it's a good guideline to have people think around, but I think in the end, you're really looking to have your students conduct themselves in accordance with what's in our handbook and our policy. That's what we can really hold people to. And then that last sentence, looking at removing it, rules of conduct will be provided to students riding the bus. Again, we don't know that there is any specific set of rules that are handed out, especially where we're using a contract service. We really have no specific guidance. I mean, we have guidance, but no specific control over that. And so again, I think creating that expectation that there's going to be a set of rules that are handed out, I don't think is necessary. And again, I think it does create an expectation that may not be realistic.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, accept the motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Juergens.
Just actually not a question, a comment, but I felt it was a relevant piece of discussion around this. So I didn't ask the question in our meeting. I think maybe it was Mr. Sykes about how students are, or families are notified of what the rules are, because that piece about the rules of conduct will be provided to students riding the bus, not being relevant, correct. But how were they notified? And you had mentioned that they sign.
Right, which is the next piece that we have here is the student conduct on school buses contract, which is, that's fine. That's all right, that's no problem. So we'll look at that next. So this is the policy, and then there is a contract for bus ridership that does go along with the policy.
Other questions? All right, I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 5312, student conduct on school buses as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Oh, I'm sorry. Who was first? I saw like 3 mouse moving.
I heard Katie.
Okay, it's okay. Katie. Ms. Malden. Second, okay, all right. Discussion, seeing none, we proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
So the next item is 5312.1, which is student conduct on school buses contract. And it's a contract because we do require that there's a signature from the student and parent at the bottom of this. And this was something that we actually spent quite a bit of time with in terms of the policy committee. And because I think there were a number of different aspects that we needed to think through on this. As you look down, I guess you start up at the top, and really the things that were changed at the top were simply, this was the contract that was put in and hasn't been reviewed since we started offering in-town transportation. And so just to take out the begin and that was this school year, and just so that it applies to the ongoing transportation that we have. So that was the first part that was there. And then as you get down into the third paragraph, there was a little bit of a change there in the fact that bus drivers will report to principals is not really the way our process works right now. Right now, basically the bus drivers are going to report it to the person who heads our contract service, and then that person then is in contact with the principals. So we really felt like to make that clear, and again, if that procedure would change, to not necessarily have to change policy, we just simply wanted all of those infractions to be reported to the principals. We're not really that, worried in terms of the policy about who is reporting it to the principals. We just want to make sure that it gets reported to the principals. And then the last sentence in that paragraph, parents will receive written communication of any loss of privileges, then through a transportation discipline report. Again, we don't necessarily want to spell that out in policy because it may be called something other than a transportation discipline report. The intent of the policy is simply that the parents are going to receive that written communication. So again, the recommendation is just to leave it at that they're going to receive a written communication. And then as we move down into the set of discipline consequences for violations, this is where we spent a lot of time. For our elementary students, first violation, warning by the driver, and notification to the principal. That was a piece that wasn't there, but we felt like it should be there because we want to, again, tying it back to what we said before, make sure that the principal is always notified whenever there's an issue. And then second violation, loss of privilege to ride the bus for 1 week. And then, and this is where we went back and forth quite a bit, third violation used to say loss of privilege to ride the bus for 2 weeks. The recommendation is that the third violation became loss of privilege to ride the bus for the remainder of the school year. So again, that was a back and forth piece that we spent quite a bit of time on. And again, I think what we really wanted to, we want to make sure that when there's a serious situation, a bullying, whatever, that, we're not stretching that out through 4 different times when there would be consequences. At the same time, we want our principals, we want our bus drivers and the people that we're working with to understand that, we want to give kids a fair chance as well. And so, again, that was part of the struggle there, was to make sure that we had in place what we felt like we needed to have, but then there was still some basically a little bit of guideline. And so when we get down here below, and then if you go ahead and look while you're there, secondary, that really didn't change. For 6 through 12, a first violation was going to be a warning. We did add the notification to the principal, and then a second violation was the loss of privilege to ride. And then down below in the transportation rules, we did some shuffling around with this. The first 2 rules stayed the same. The third rule, we crossed that one out because it became a part of what we have in the statement down below there. We changed the no food or drinks to no eating or drinking on the bus because we recognize the fact that kids probably have water bottles, they have things that they're probably going to carry with them. And really the intent is just that they're not eating and drinking and making a mess on the bus. So we changed the wording there. And then the other part of that, no food, drink, or illegal substances, we thought those things maybe didn't align all that well, that eating and drinking and illegal substances might be treated a little bit differently. So then we added the statement down below, bullying, harassment, fighting, or possession of controlled substances or illegal items or weapons may result in immediate loss of bus privileges for the remainder of the school year. So again, we tried to create an understanding of what was a less severe violation and what might be considered a more extreme, and consequently have more extreme consequences. questions about that? Like I said, we did a lot of back and forth on this one, and I think had some really good, thoughtful discussion around it, and this is where the policy committee ended up.
Mr. Helinski.
I know last time, at the last meeting, we kind of talked about the wording of loss of privilege of riding the bus for 1 week. My concern is that if it's a short week, the student may only lose privileges for 2 days.
That's right, we did.
Instead of 1 week, maybe 1 school week.
Or we could also specify 5 school days, or.
Right, I just think that the wording of
right.
1 week could mean
Yeah, we did have that discussion, and I did not bring that to the committee when we were talking about it, but I think we were all pretty much in agreement when we talked about it last month. So we can certainly amend this accordingly. Or we can send it back to the committee, we can table it for a month and send it back to the committee, and the committee can revise it. However you want to handle that, I guess.
I would like to table this till next month so we can get it done correctly.
Okay. Maybe there's other thoughts that we need to think about too.
Okay, let's go ahead and go for the questions. Mr. Hawley, you were next.
Do we have, I can't remember from our conversations, do we have a separate policy that governs students riding the bus for school activities? So if they're kicked out of here, but let's say they're an athlete and they have an away game, does this tie into that? Is it further down the list?
Well, there is, the next one is dealing with extracurricular activities, but
There we go.
I don't think there is anything in that policy that would tie together with this policy, and so again, maybe that's a piece that we need to think around, because we didn't talk about that previously.
If they do tie it together, it's going to hinder extracurricular activities, and I don't know, I mean, that may require more discussion from the policy committee on how that's gonna look.
The one thing that I would say is probably, I wouldn't necessarily tie these things together, because this is, if you read that first sentence up there, our school district is pleased to offer in-town transportation on a limited basis. So this, to me, is for in-town transportation. These are the guidelines that are there, and the people that are gonna sign this contract are the people that are gonna ride in town. So we're not asking all of our people that ride activity buses to sign this. So I guess I would see those two probably being separated, just because they are two different transportation pieces. But if we think we need clarification on that, we certainly can clarify that too. And
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Thank you. My question is on the language of parents, as Mrs. Jurgens had said. Parents, I wonder if we could add that they will receive written communication of any warning or loss of privileges. Was that discussed at all?
we did discuss, and I think the intent was, is that anytime there was something that parent, because obviously if they're, especially 612, are only gonna get one warning, and probably a written notification at the
Is
time
that
that warning
something
happens.
that maybe when we,
So probably, since we're gonna take it back, that's probably some,
this is, I think that would help with,
additional wording
yeah,
that we probably wanna look at.
thank you. And I like how we shifted the no food and drinks or illegal substance away from each other, and said no eating or drinking on the bus, because I assume some of these students maybe have food or snacks to sustain them throughout the day, and I guess just letting them know you can bring them on the bus, but just don't eat them. So I think that's really good. But no, yeah, great work. Thank you.
Ms. Malden.
So, panning it off of what Eric was saying about like notification to parents, wouldn't that be an automatic thing? Like once the principal got notified, wouldn't the principal then notify the parents?
I would say yes, they should. But probably that's one that probably, if the intent, and I think our intent would be that the parent does get notified, it's probably okay to put that in policy.
Because I know you can't lean on kids to tell
And
parents
again,
things.
this policy is a little bit different than some policies because this is a contract that parents are gonna sign, so I think it's probably good that it's spelled out there.
And I was also thinking about the in-town transportation, about it being specified, because it could confuse somebody maybe, like in town, because if it was an extracurricular activity in town, somebody could think it was the same thing. Because it's still classified, they just went across town, but it was an extracurricular activity.
Well, we'll talk through that and see if there's some other language that we need to change, so. I think probably going ahead and going through the tabling motion and taking care of that and bringing it back to the committee is probably where we need to be.
Any other comments, questions before we go to a motion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'd like to make a motion to table policy 5312.1, student conduct on school buses contract as presented to next school board meeting in December of 2023.
Second by Mr. Hawley. Discussion. Seeing none, we may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, the next policy that we have in the list here is 5320, School Transportation Safety Program. Again, it just simply says that, we are gonna have safe vehicles that we're gonna utilize for student transportation as well as other uses. We're not proposing any changes here.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we proceed to a vote. Oh, I'm sorry, first I would entertain a motion. Sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 5320, School Transportation Safety Program as presented.
I'm sorry, who's that? Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion, none, we proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, the next policy that we have there, 5320.1, School Transportation Safety Program. Basically, all schools were required to adopt a safe pupil transportation plan, and that's what this is. And as you go through this, we really aren't proposing much in the way of changes. We did, when you get down to the bottom of that first page right above the emergency contact numbers, again, to be consistent with what we were looking at doing with the other policy there, rather than saying no food or drinks, we're basically going to propose changing that to no eating or drinking. Because again, we do recognize that there probably are food and drinks. And then, as you go down here further, there was that place, and this was something that we had talked about previously, that oftentimes weather conditions deteriorate during the day. That really doesn't happen that often, so weather conditions may deteriorate, forcing us to cancel school. Was the change that we proposed earlier. I think that was it in terms of this policy that we were looking at as far as changes there. So, questions on that?
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve 5320.1, School Transportation Safety Program guidelines as presented.
Second by Ms. Malden. Discussion? None? Proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, then 5322 is the policy that does address student transportation for extracurricular activities. Just a few changes proposed in this one. First sentence in the second paragraph, students participating in extracurricular events. Originally had said other than those held at the school district facilities. And again, because we do transport students at times from one of our school district facilities to another, so we're actually, that doesn't necessarily apply. So again, I think it probably just reads better. Students participating in extracurricular events may be transported to the extracurricular event. Doesn't really matter whether it's to another one of our facilities or not. And then you go a little further on in that, and there was a statement there, students attending extracurricular events other than those held at the school district facilities may be transported to the extracurricular events by the school district transportation vehicles. That was just a repeat of the statement that was made before, but we did feel like there needed to be a reference, kind of like what we had made the change in that first transportation policy. School district provided transportation should be considered an extension of school property, and students should conduct themselves in accordance with guidelines established in handbooks and policy. Again, just tying back to the fact that when you're on a school bus, we're going to have the same expectations that we would have when you're at school. Questions on that? And then, okay, better get down to the bottom of this, because this was the other one that actually did require some thinking about. That last sentence there, a student's parent may personally appear and request to transport the student home from a school-sponsored event in which the student travels to the event on a school district transportation vehicle. And in the statement above that, basically it talks about signing that student off ahead of time. And then it says in this that it would allow them to appear personally and sign them off at the event. And as we discussed that, we ultimately decided that that's probably not a great practice because many of our sponsors are not going to know who the custodial parents are. And we just feel like we're opening ourselves up to some potential liability if we are allowing people to sign off without any, knowledge of who, whether this person has actual custody. The student could very well say, yes, this is my father, or this is my mother, but there may be no custody there that the student probably has no necessary knowledge of. So again, we're not saying that parents can't sign their students off. We're just saying it has to be done through the school office where they would know. So that was, again, a change, and it's one of those things that we will have to educate our parents about, because that's a practice that has been allowed in some parts of the district and not in other parts. So we'll need to make sure that we educate parents as we move forward if the board should choose to adopt that. Questions?
Mr. Hawley.
Not a question necessarily, more of a statement. I think along with educating our parents about this, we need to educate our coaches as well. There's an inconsistency at the high school with regards to pre-signed forms that go out that kids can take, and then maybe they're at an event and they can turn it in there. I think that we really need to educate our coaching staff on this policy and make sure that it's seen through.
Agreed.
Other questions? I'd entertain a motion at this time.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 5322 transportation to extracurricular activities as presented.
Second by Mr. Hawley. Discussion. Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Okay, on to reports. Item 7.1, Grand Island Public Schools Foundation Report. Ms. Jurgens.
The Foundation Board approved 13 classroom grants totaling $17,111, surprising the winning teachers on October 25th and 26th. These grants will impact 4,554 students. The GIPS Foundation is partnering with Gear Up and the Greater Grand Island Community Foundation to offer a scholarship fair for our students and parents at the Islander Annex building on November 29th. There will be presentations on the local scholarship applications, presentations on FSFA IDs, and booths for students and parents to visit. Numerous college partners have agreed to be there, as well as Education Quest and Gish Academy principals and counselors. Included in the event will be no-cost headshots for students and career closets for students. That means they can get career clothes to make them feel more confident. The Foundation's College Scholarship online application will open December 1st and is accessible at gipsfoundation.org. Important dates: November 8th, Scholarship Workshop for Teachers, November 16th, Scholarship Workshop for Counselors, and December 6th, Scholarship Essay Strategies. The Foundation will meet again on November 15th, 2023.
All right, thank you. All right, number 7.2, Student Representative Report, Ms. Adeline Beltran.
On October 26th, the Gish volleyball team won in 3 sets versus Columbus, making them district champs. And this made history as it was their first state appearance in 10 years. And then at the state tournament, they fell short in 4 sets, but they had an incredible season, ending off with 26 wins and being the A5 district champ. And then this past month, senior Jalen Hansen has also committed to play volleyball at Concordia University. And the people who signed to play at a higher level for athletics had their signing yesterday at Gish. And then the Islanders also qualified for the state football playoffs. And so in the first round, they beat Kearney 29-19, which ended their season. And it was a pretty great experience because Kearney had actually beat us earlier in the season. And then in the second round, we fell short against Millard West 7-31, but they still had a great season and ended off strong. And this was also their 6th straight year of being in the playoffs. And we've also had some special recognition for some football boys. So senior Justice Holstetler was recognized as the October 2023 Male ESPN Tri-Cities Athlete of the Month. And Bodie Albers, also a senior, was recognized as the 10-11 Now Athlete of the Week, which was, I guess, he was recognized by the 3 touchdown performance that he performed in the first round of the state playoffs against Kearney. And then state cross country was also held at the Kearney Country Club on October 20th. And though it was a really hot day, it was still a great experience to see my teammates and other schools run. And even though the official cross-country season has ended, we still have one more race for varsity, which is the Nike Cross Regionals, or NXR, and it's this weekend in South Dakota. It's not a school-sponsored race, so we have to pay for the transportation there and the hotels, and we also can't wear our Islander jerseys, but we'll make sure to represent Grand Island well. And then October 20th was also the last home football game, where we played Omaha Northwest, winning 79-6. And the cross country varsity team was also recognized during halftime for our performance this season and for the state qualifiers. And it was kind of silly because the football theme was costumes, so we kind of all went, like, one of the freshmen that was on varsity, we were standing together and she was Cat in the Hat, so it was kind of funny. And with that, the fall sports has come to an end, and winter sports will begin on Monday, November 13th. As for activities, the Beauty and the Beast musical premiered on October 26th, 28th, and 29th in the Gish Auditorium, and it was a great experience for those who participated and for the audience because of the wonderful performance. And State Student Council was also hosted at Gish on Friday, October 27th. And over 600 students from schools all over Nebraska participated. And we had the opportunity to listen to keynote speaker Kara Filler on the importance of making choices and how it impacts others around us. And there was also some fun activities that we had. So we had a therapy pony. We were able to feed goats outside, but it was really cold, so I only went out there for like 10 minutes. But I got a picture with a goat. And there was yoga and self-defense by Miss Kier, who's out there. And there was also cookie decorating, and there was lots more activities. And then Gish Hosa hosted they had a dine-in fundraiser at Texas Roadhouse last Thursday. And it's basically where 10% of the total food purchases went to Hosa. And then the National Honor Society Red Cross Committee is organizing a blood drive for this November on the 17th, and Gish holds the record for the longest donations in a single day, and we would like to keep it that way. So if anyone is able or willing to donate, I can sign you up. And Gish also hosted the Islander Extravaganza on Monday, November 6th, and it's where 8th grade students and their families were able to learn about the different opportunities and clubs and sports available for when they enter high school. And Mr. Gilbertson was kind enough to give me a quote on that, and he said, "This was the first year that we have held the Islander Extravaganza in November because we desire to get our incoming ninth graders familiar and comfortable with Gish as soon as possible. And we were happy to welcome 200 students and families to the event." And then poet Matt Mason is visiting Gish from November 8th to the 10th. And he is a state poet who is coming to each English class to discuss poetry. And he actually came to my class yesterday. And it was kind of interesting to see, because in my AP Lit class, we've analyzed some of his poems and the different interpretations that people can have. So it was pretty interesting to see him kind of go through his poems. And he is also at Gish today for a free poetry reading that is open to the public, and that is being held in the Little Theater. And then lastly, on October 27th, Mr. Gilbertson and Miss Wells announced their retirement, which will be at the end of the school year. And both have had such a large impact on their students and community and will be missed by many. And with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Ms. Beltran. Number 7.3, Superintendent Report.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to make sure and direct the board's attention to is that by policy, incumbent officers for our president and vice president offices are to declare their intent within the next 2 days following the November board meeting. And anyone else that's interested in running for that president, vice president slot has till December 1st to declare their intent. And then nominations will be taken when we get to January from those that have declared an intent to run for those offices. So, just a reminder. Earlier, and I think maybe everyone but Lindsay maybe got a chance to look at them, but and Katie, they're somewhere over there. We have a couple of old record books, 1878 era books that Angela found when she was hunting for some information for Mr. Harden, and they're basically board minutes is what they are in one book, and then the other book is the Board of Examiners record of teachers that were tested at that time to see if they qualified to be teachers or not. And I contacted the Stewart Museum. They are interested in having those items to display. I just wanted to let the board know, and I guess if there's any concerns about that, you can certainly share those with me. But Angela has made an electronic copy of those that she'll organize into, a record so that we still have a record of those things. But I think rather than rotting away in our basement, it would probably be something that'd be kind of neat for people in Hall County to see. So, okay. Just a couple of things that has been on my radar in the last week or so. Met with the chamber group that was put together. I say chamber because the Chamber of Commerce put the group together, but basically to have a discussion about childcare in Grand Island. They brought together some of the different businesses and really had a good discussion around a problem that we all have with employees having a hard time finding childcare. And so it was a good dialogue. I think there'll be further follow-up dialogues on that. So again, that's just something that's out there. Yesterday, Virgil and I had a chance to meet. The Economic Development Corporation actually brought us together with representative from the county to just talk about taxes. And so started a good dialogue there. Again, I think something that we're going to continue to probably involve the city and some of the other taxing entities, just to have a discussion around taxes. We spent quite a bit of time talking about TIF and how that impacts us. And I think I think as we think about our understanding of those other entities and where they're taxing, we probably don't have a great understanding of them, and they certainly don't have a real good understanding of how our taxing structure works. So I think it's a good dialogue that's going on there. This week, I know you guys, or a number of you, had a chance to be a part of the communications audit, and had an exit interview with Frank, the gentleman who kind of headed up that communications audit on Wednesday morning, and really some very insightful stuff. As I thought about the communication audit, I didn't know exactly what we would get out of that, other than knowing what's working and what isn't. But I think there was a lot of really good insight that he shared, just about how our public perceives different things. So I think there'll be some really good information when we get that report. He shared a number of things that he felt like were very good. I mean, for the most part, he was very complimentary of things that we're doing in the district. He was super complimentary of our students and the student group that he met with. So I think really very good things coming out of that. The last thing I just wanted to mention is, have spent quite a bit of time this week on our financial position, and on Monday we met with our principals, divided them up into the various levels. Our elementary principals met, our middle school principals, our high school principals met in separate groups to just really talk about where are we going to be able to find some areas where we can reduce our costs. And so it's been an ongoing conversation. In our staff newsletter yesterday, I had an 18-minute video that I don't know if anyone will listen to school finances for 18 minutes or not, but did try and walk through really what our financial situation is and why we are facing the financial challenge that we're going to be working our way through, and so that was in our staff newsletter. And I think a number of this is how crazy this is some of the principals had watch parties to watch the 18-minute school finance video. So anyhow, hopefully in the end, I think the things that we really wanted to share with our staff is what was going on, why we are where we are, and really ask for their input. We know that the best solutions can come from anywhere, and there may be someone out there that has an idea that's going to save us some money. That's, we certainly want to include that in the discussion. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We're going to continue to move through that process, and as I shared with the principals and the other department heads, what we're really looking for from that group is ideas so that we can put together options, and then ultimately the options are going to be things that the district leadership team is going to be able to take a look at and say, well, here are things that we think, and then ultimately the board's probably going to have a role in deciding which of those options we pursue in order to meet that financial challenge that's out there. So that is what I have to report.
Mr. Linsky.
Just to the people who have not watched that video yet, please do. Very transparent, and it's important that everybody understands where we are. My wife's school principal, Mr. Balcom, was one that did have a watch party. She didn't go, but she did watch it last night, and I watched it as well. And this is me assuming that I'm smarter than my wife, which isn't true. We have 2 honor students at home. They did not get that from their father. So, but she was able to understand it, and school finance is not easy to understand. It really isn't. But just want to thank you for doing that, because you broke it down. I mean, to the point where, again, I always talked with our boy Kenny. He always said, teach to the room there, and when I was in the room, it always seemed to be at a lower level. But there was arrows pointing stuff out, stuff was circled when you were talking about it, and so it was a very well put together video. So if anybody has a chance to watch that video and hasn't yet, I strongly, strongly urge you to do that, because it does paint a very, very good picture of where we're at.
And kudos to Mitch and Kelly, because they were the ones that put the arrows and all that, the really good looking stuff in there. That was thanks to them.
But you explained it well too.
Yeah. The good thing was they could follow my explanation enough to put red arrows in.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Item number 8, executive session for the purpose of negotiations and the superintendent's evaluation, because it's in the best interest of the public to discuss this matter in closed session. Let's see here. At this time, I would accept a motion for the board to convene to executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations and the superintendent's evaluation.
I make a recommendation for the board to convene an executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations and the superintendent's evaluation.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Don't forget to leave phones and smartwatches in here.
Yes.
Thank you.
I would accept a motion at this time to reconvene.
I'd make a motion to reconvene from the executive session.
Second by Mr. Hawley. Discussion? None? All in favor? Motion passes. Okay. All righty. Why is this not moving? Come here. I can't read the bottom of that for some reason. Well, shoot. You see that? I can't get, I can't get to the bottom.
Hit a refresh.
Oh, you can't scroll on the
I
other
can't,
side.
Hit this up there.
This thing?
Yeah. Now see if you can go.
No, you can't.
No? Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. All righty. Come on.
So go to your right and scroll up, probably. That's what I'm having. So move over to the right.
No, go to the right, go to this one over here.
Let's scroll up.
And scroll up.
There we go.
I'm having the same problem.
Okay, all righty. At this time, I would entertain a motion for approval of the superintendent's evaluation, both the executive summary and the actual evaluation itself.
I make a motion to approve the executive summary and the superintendent's evaluation.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hawley. Discussion? Seeing none, move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Notification on next meeting, regular Board of Education meeting will be Thursday, December 14th, 2023 at 5:30 PM. As of this moment, it is now 8:26. We call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Very good discussion.